This morning, I request that we adjourn in memory of Richard Trumka, the longtime leader and president of the AFL-CIO, who passed away unexpectedly on August 5th. The AFL-CIO is made up of 56 national and international unions, representing 12.5 million working men and women. Richard Trumka was a third-generation coal miner from immigrant Italian and Polish stock, growing up in the little Appalachian coal town of Nemacolin in southwest Pennsylvania. He was elected president of his union, the United Mine Workers of America, arguably the single most important union in American labor history. That union was the driving force in the creation of the massive industrial labor organizing campaigns of the Great Depression. In 1989, Brother Trumka led an epic 10-month strike of 2,000 union miners against the Pittston Coal Company. I had just been elected president of my local union, and the Pittston strike was a national inspiration for us. It was my first experience in support of workers on strike on in a national campaign. I'm especially proud because our union, HERE, sent 5 cooks to Camp Solidarity to prepare 3 meals a day, 7 days a week until the strikers won. In 1995, Brother Trumka joined John Sweeney and Linda Chavez Thompson in the first contested election in the AFL-CIO's history as a federation. They won. They elected the first woman and person of color as a national officer on his slate. Rich Trumka was committed to organize a new labor movement. As a signal to that commitment, he decided to hold the next AFL-CIO convention in Los Angeles in 1999. On the second day of the convention, Brother Trumka, I had the privilege of marching with Brother Trumka as he led thousands of convention delegates to the streets of downtown Los Angeles in the first ever National Labor Movement March in support of immigrant workers. This was at the New Otani Hotel, which we were organizing. Hundreds of workers eventually won unionization. At this convention, the AFL-CIO broke with its past and approved the historic Stand Up for Immigrant Workers resolution, acknowledging the role of unions to defend undocumented workers as brothers and sisters in the same labor movement. I am privileged to have chaired the National AFL-CIO Immigration Committee and to have served on the AFL-CIO Executive Council, the highest body in the AFL-CIO, under Brother Trumka's leadership. He was bold and he was unwavering in his commitment to all working families. The pro-worker, pro-immigrant doctrine of his Catholic faith informed his sense of solidarity. He saw and felt the common ground between the labor movement and the immigrants' rights movement. He saw and felt the common ground between miners in Pennsylvania and miners in South Africa fighting to dismantle apartheid. He saw the common ground between white steelworkers in Ohio and an African American running for president of the US. He saw the common ground between South Asian taxi drivers and Latina domestic workers alongside painters and electricians. He saw the common ground between the 6-year strike of Las Vegas Frontier casino workers and the Pittston strikers. On a personal note, on the occasion of the 2013 AFL-CIO convention in Los Angeles, he agreed to do the traditional evening at a baseball game. He was a hardcore Pirates fan, but he swallowed his dislike for the Dodgers and threw out the first pitch. I got to catch it. He was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. He left us far too soon. Our labor movement and millions of workers here and all over the world mourn his death. Those same workers will recommit to the ideals of justice that Brother Rich Trumka dedicated his life. Colleagues, I respectfully ask we adjourn in his name.
Senator Durazo, thank you. That was beautiful. We're now going to recognize President Pro Tem Atkins on the adjourned memory of Richard Trumka. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I am clearly not going to have the articulate comments from that my colleague from Los Angeles just made, but I really had to get up and say a few things from a very personal perspective. You know, I never thought I'd hear the word Pittston Coal Company or coal miners actually on the floor of the Senate, and I'm really sorry that we're hearing it today in conjunction with the passing of a very decent man, a very incredible advocate for working people. And to the comments that my colleague from Los Angeles made, you know, I grew up, my dad was a lead miner, a coal miner, and so I'm used to people not understanding the fight of some of those workers and dismissing whole communities of people because of the type of work they do that might not be the best from an environmental standpoint. But my colleague said he was hardcore. He absolutely was hardcore in the ways that he presented his message. When I finally met Richard Trumka, for me, it was like meeting celebrity, only second to my favorite person of all time, Dolly Parton. So that inspires and tells you how important the work that he did was for me and my family. Particularly, you know, as someone who worked in the coal mines, went on to get a degree, found a way to do that, and then went on to law school and figured out how to bring together the intersectionality, we like that word today, the intersectionality of values and how you equate that with the economy and how it impacts communities of people, and yet take it forward in a way that talks about environmental justice and climate issues and how it impacts the very communities of people who are doing jobs that work against that very goal of a better environment, and yet having not many options. My favorite time was to see him on the stage in San Francisco as part of our former Governor Brown's climate conference, where he made the most passionate speech about not leaving communities behind as we set those goals. And to me, that was him speaking to my Appalachian heritage and people in Southwest Virginia and West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Arizona and places where mining is a job that brings money to support your families. And so when I met him, I really was supposed to be the Speaker of the Assembly, and then later, as you're respectfully pro tem, but all I could see was someone who had managed to take that fight to the highest level, representing 12.5 million workers, and then holding those workers accountable to changing times and beliefs. He fought prejudice within the ranks and held people accountable to bring them along as he had come along from generations of hardworking people in all of those professions that my colleague mentioned. So, you know, I am going to miss him because he always made me feel as important as anybody, regardless of title. And when I came in, he couldn't wait to give me the latest book that he was diving into to discuss these important issues. I gave him my favorite book, a copy of a book, Deer Hunting with Jesus, as a means to talk about political philosophy and how it applies to blue-collar working-class people. So I always liked the opportunity to do an exchange. I rise in sadness today just as an individual who had an opportunity to meet someone who meant so much to my family and made a difference in those lives, in wages and health care and recognition for the dignity of the work that they each did. And so thank you to my colleague for doing such an eloquent job of his professional history and also giving a glimpse of who this man was, a decent American fighting for workers in America. I join you in adjourning in memory of him today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. Such an incredibly personal statement on behalf of Richard Trumka in his memory. Thank you so much, Madam President Pro Tem. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we now would like to turn our attention to Senator Cortese, adjourn in memory on behalf of Mr. Trumka. Mr. Cortese.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise to adjourn in memory in honor of the late Richard Trumka. Thank you, Madam Pro Tem, for your eloquence and the personal touch. Thank you to my colleague from Los Angeles for the great tribute on the professional legacy of Richard Trumka. I just wanted to add a little bit about the man for those who did not have the opportunity to meet him or to engage him in terms of the style of leadership that he represented and how he conducted himself. And it was on a very personal basis, and it was on a very individual basis. And he did make a point when he was in our region to let labor leaders know that he wanted to speak one-on-one with leaders and folks in the community who can make a difference. And then he did that. And as eloquent as he was, and as powerful a speaker as he was, and we all heard recently a speech that was shared within our caucus that he made on racism, where he touched upon and explained racism in this country, again with a personal touch, by using an anecdote about what his neighbor said, what a local person said to him that helped explain to all of us how racism was occurring in this country with the election of a president of the United States at the time. But on a one-on-one basis, he was a soft-spoken person. He was a very approachable person. He was a person who gave the impression that he wanted to befriend you. And I think that's why there was such an emotional response to his death among so many of us. Sometimes when a great leader passes away, we all first learn about it through news, through headlines, through news wires. So many of us heard about the death of Richard Trumka because somebody else who shared moments with him, who did local work with him, let us know through a text and through the kind of communication that you more often see when somebody loses a member of a family, when somebody loses somebody who we all know on a first-name basis. There is the leader of the AFL-CIO was lost today, or died today, or passed away. But the message that was circulated really in a viral manner, one person at a time, when we lost Richard Trumka, was that we lost Richard today. And I just wanted to make sure to take the opportunity as somebody who had the chance to work with him a little bit in my own county of Santa Clara County to share, again, the style of leadership and the personal empathy and interest that he had in all of us as he did his job. It's a tremendous loss. We must honor his legacy through action. And I too stand again with a request to adjourn in his memory today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.